and especially through this divine service, to understand that He, the monarch of the universe, is to become and to be the monarch of our mind, to be enthroned therein. He who created us with that very design in mind right from the very beginning. Every creature, every intelligent entity in the universe that He created. It is written here in Desire of Ages, page 161. From eternal ages, it was God's purpose that every created being, from the bright and holy seraph, the angel, to man, should be a temple for the indwelling of the Creator. Ponder this. The God of the universe, who is the monarch of every intelligence and is the monarch of every atom, of every cell in your body. If you study this very carefully, you know that inside of a cell there is a ruling government. And that government is governed by the monarch of the universe. When we seek to comprehend this great God, it defies all human comprehension. Yet, it is a reality that can be experienced. And it's a great privilege to have Him as the monarch of your mind. And so indeed it was the design of God that this be the case. And all the hosts of heaven and of the universe are joyfully subservient to that monarch. But there is one dark blot. And I'm going to read about this dark blot. When this earth was created by Christ, it was holy and beautiful. God pronounced it very good. Every flower, every shrub, every tree answered to the purpose of its Creator. Everything upon which the eye rested was lovely and filled the mind with thoughts of love for the Creator. Every sound was music in perfect harmony with the voice of God. But, horrible word, but a change has come. Sin has brought decay, deformity, and death. Today, the whole world is tainted, corrupted, stricken with a mortal disease. The earth groans under the continual transgression of the inhabitants thereof. Is it very good? Human beings have degenerated. one after another, they fall under the curse because sin has entered the world and death by sin. The truth is not made precious by practice. It does not sanctify the soul. It fades from the mind. Why? Because the heart does not appreciate its value. Truth. It doesn't appreciate the value of truth. In consequence, the mind becomes more and more darkened by the atmosphere which is malarious because of the perpetuating of Adam's sin. The conscience has lost its sensitiveness. Through a repetition of sin, the impression made on the conscience by sin has no longer force enough to arrest the transgressor, diseased, depraved, and dying. The voice no longer echoes the voice of God, or gives expression to the music of a soul sanctified through the truth. The heart in which God should be enthroned is a place from which come forth all kinds of abominations. How has the fine gold become dim? Man has lost the reflection of God's character. On this planet, in our life, we are deceived if we think that it's all very good. According to this declaration, it is horribly, horribly marred. Our conference is to deal with the mind, which I have just been reading there, has been darkened more and more. And you and I have been born in a very, very dark-minded time. And I had to come to terms with that, because what I have grown up as to expect as normal is actually extremely degenerated. But I thought it was lovely. But the nearer I come to what God in His Word was saying, and what it used to be, as I look back at history, we are not an advanced race. Sorry. We might be advanced in knowledge, in technology, in the comforts of life, but we are deplorably dying. Just go to the hospitals. I'm a trained nurse. It's sick. And the people that are in hospital are only a small portion of those who are sick outside of hospital. When I did my nurse's training, I nearly gave up on wanting to live, because I saw the deep, deep, deep disease of the human race. And the worst one is mental. But God's purpose that I read in the beginning, that He designed and purposed that every created being should be a temple for the indwelling of the Creator, was not going to be thwarted. He was not going to be diverted from His intention for this dark blot here. Because He says in Exodus 25, verse 8, He says, "Let them make me a sanctuary." Why? "That I may dwell among them." What? These depraved human beings, these Israelites, these Hebrews who had come out of Babylon, out of Egyptian captivity, who were absolutely perverted by slavery. He said, I want to dwell among them. What an object lesson. What a typical reference to our position, who are all in slavery to our past upbringing. I want to dwell among them. And if you turn to Leviticus chapter 26, notice that although there is this terrible, terrible darkness, this decaying depravity, that God says, I don't mind. I don't mind. You know, we put God in a position where we think he is too holy to come and dwell with sinners. But look what he says in Leviticus 26, verse 11 and 12. And I will set my tabernacle among you, and my soul shall not abhor you. And I will walk among you, and will be your God, and you shall be my people. What sort of a mind are we meeting here? These sick, depraved human beings, these people who haven't got God in their mind anymore, he said, I'm going to come and dwell among you. I'm going to set my tabernacle among you. Let them make me a sanctuary, that I may dwell among them. Who built the Hebrew sanctuary? The people provided all of its construction material. But the most profound story in this typical representation is the reality of what Jesus was about. If you come now to John chapter 2, verse 19 to 21. Remember, he said, let them make me a sanctuary. I will set my tabernacle among you. I will not abhor you. And what was the tabernacle that he had in reality in mind? John chapter 2. You see, so perverted was the understanding of the Jews, as we may be also, that we place far more importance on sanctuary material, on church organization, that we miss the reality. And here Jesus demonstrates it, and he talks in verses 19 to 21. Jesus answered and said unto them, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. Then said the Jews, 46 years was this temple in building. Wilt thou rear it up in 3 days? Remember what they said in the time before Babylonian captivity? The temple of the Lord are these. And today, the temple of the Lord are we, the church. Follow very carefully what Jesus is saying. Here is the mistake of the Hebrews, of the Jews here. They said, what? Destroy this temple and build it again in 3 days? But in verse 21, but he spake of the temple of his body. The temple of his body. Let them make me a sanctuary, that I may dwell among them. I will set my tabernacle among them, and I will not abhor them. Jesus, his body, was that temple that dwelt among them. He dwelt among the human race. And here we read a very beautiful representation. Incidentally, if you're taking notes, The statement I read before about that dark blot was Bible Echo, May 21, 1900, paragraph 1 to 3. Now I'm reading from Desire of Ages, page 161, as we meditate about what Jesus said about his body temple, which was broken down and rose again on the third day. And as Jesus was saying that, they should have remembered, because he went there and cleansed the earth, the temple, remember, of all those money changers and sellers and buyers of the animals there, the marketplace in the temple. It says, in the cleansing of the temple, Jesus was announcing his mission as the Messiah and entering upon his work. That temple, erected for the abode of the divine presence, was designed to be an object lesson for Israel and for the world. So it wasn't a power within itself, it was an object lesson. From eternal ages, it was God's purpose that every created being, from the bright and holy seraph to man, should be a temple for the indwelling of the Creator. I read that, didn't I? But then it went on to say, because of sin, humanity ceased to be the temple for God. Darkened and defiled by evil, the heart of man no longer revealed the glory of the Divine One. But, now follow carefully here, but by the incarnation. What does incarnation mean? That God became instilled into the human body. By the incarnation of the Son of God, the purpose of heaven is fulfilled. In whom was it fulfilled? In the man, Jesus Christ. God dwells in humanity, and through saving grace, the heart of man becomes again his temple. God designed that the temple at Jerusalem should be a continual witness to the high destiny open to every soul. But the Jews had not understood the significance of the building they regarded with so much pride. Can you see our problem? Just like theirs. They did not yield themselves as holy temples for the divine Spirit. The courts of the temple at Jerusalem, filled with the tumult of unholy traffic, represented all too truly the temple of the heart, defiled by the presence of sensual passion and unholy thoughts. In cleansing that temple from the world's buyers and sellers, Jesus announced his mission to do what? He was a symbolic picture of to do what? To cleanse the heart from the defilement of sin, from the earthly desires, the selfish lusts, the evil habits that corrupt the soul. And further down it says, his presence, God's presence, will cleanse and sanctify the soul so that it may be a holy temple unto the Lord and an habitation of God through the Spirit. So what is the whole purpose of God to this sin-sick soul, this sin-sick earth? He said, I will not abhor you. I will come and dwell among you. I will come to you. And Jesus was the representation of that. As in the Hebrew sanctuary, there was the Shekinah glory inside of the sanctuary in the most holy place. For God to show us that He is prepared to come very close to us, inside of us, to do what? To cleanse us by His presence. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 16 and let that sink in. Leviticus chapter 16, where is the Day of Atonement? Remember, we live in that Day of Atonement at this very moment. That is the reality of the Day of Atonement in Leviticus chapter 16, verses 18 and 19. Leviticus 16, 18 and 19. And here on the Day of Atonement, the high priest was to go out unto the altar that is before the Lord and make an atonement for it, and shall take of the blood of the bullock and the blood of the goat, and put it upon the horns of the altar round about it. And he shall sprinkle of the blood upon it with his fingers 7 times, and cleanse it, and hallow it from the uncleanness of the children of Israel. The horns of the altar had accumulated what over the year? Sin, which was a symbol of the accumulation of the sins that are on the horns of our altars. Remember what we read in Jeremiah 17 verse 1? The sins are written with a point of a diamond upon the tables of your heart and upon the horns of your altars, plural. That's the way it reads. And on the Day of Atonement, what was done with the sin that was symbolically inscribed on those horns? It was cleansed from all those sins. The soul must be cleansed from vanity and pride and vacated of all that has held it in possession, and Christ must be enthroned within. This is Desire of Ages, page 494, paragraph 4. The monarch of our mind. This is the very subject we are here contemplating. The monarch of our throne is to be Jesus Christ, is to be God Himself, and in the process of Him becoming the monarch, the soul will be cleansed from vanity and pride and vacated of all that has held it in possession. That was the mission of Christ. And I want to ask you this morning, as we are gathered here, we are gathered here to worship. Jesus said He is looking for people who worship Him in spirit and in truth. Is this what you're here for? Do you want God's purpose to take full fruition in your soul? This is God's purpose. We are living on this dark blot, with a dark blot in our brain. And the Lord is asking us, do you want my purpose to take full effect in your life? How is He going to do that? How will He come in? What did we read during our conference here so far? The brain nerves, which communicate to the entire system, are the only medium through which heaven can communicate to man and affect his inmost life. The brain cells. That was Testimony Volume 2, 347. paragraph 2. The brain nerves are the only medium. Is there any other one by which God can come into you? There is no other. It says they are the only medium. So that the brain nerves have to be carefully cared for so that God can come into our being. And you will remember how God will do this if we cooperate with Him, because the Holy Spirit will give us an electric shock. And the whole system becomes rearranged. This is part of the cleansing. You see, your understanding and my understanding of life has been gained by a very slow process. We've got babies here. We've got little children growing up. And you are teaching them what life is meant to be about. The brain nerves are picking up messages. And as it says in the Times Atlas of the Body, page 87, it says, for the senses that are coming upon us, the stimulations to make any sense to us, they are accumulated in the brain material from babyhood up. Senses of hearing, of sight, of touch. And they are gathering in the brain, and the combination of all these different sensations coming into the brain are carefully accumulated so that they come to become meaningful to us. This has taken a lifetime as we are now adults. And now God comes along and He says, I've got to rearrange you all. All the things that became meaningful to you through your senses have now to be rearranged. And according to Desire of Ages, page 173, there in paragraph 3 it says, it is a patient, protracted process. You see, many people believe in Christianity that God will do magic. He's going to touch your life and all of a sudden you're going to be rearranged totally. And all that you ever need to know to be saved is all going to happen like a magician. Flash, you're born again. Now you are perfect. Sorry, that's not true science at all. And God functions according to scientific principles, as we've already studied. So, it says in Testimony, Volume 5, page 272, truth must be apprehended by the intellect, received into the heart, and its principles incorporated into the character. This is a total new development from what had been developed from babyhood to adulthood. Now we have to start all over again. And it's a patient, protracted process by which truth comes to the intellect, and the intellect receives it and tries to make sense of it. And then when it discovers the sense of it, it goes into the heart, which is the frontal part of our brain. And its principles are then to be incorporated into the character. And did you pick up, what's the first point of call? As it comes through the brain nerves, what's the first point of call? That truth must be apprehended by the intellect. That's the first point of call. It goes up from the senses, from the hearing, from the seeing. As you hear the truth, as you see people who are following the truth, as you read the Bible with your eyes, it all brings in messages to your intellect, up the spinal cord. And the work of getting that truth into the system is the work of the sealing of the 144,000 today. Did you know that? It says it there in Bible Commentary, Volume 4, page 1161. It says, settling into the truth, both intellectually and spiritually, so that they cannot be moved. The same process, and we can read many scriptures that talk about this. We must take the milk of the word and then the meat of the word as we grow old enough. And that is how we are going to be developed through the intellect to reach the heart. So there are horns of your, as we study the horns of your nervous system, the anterior and posterior horns of your spinal column, reaching right up into the brain, which also has horns, as the Hebrew sanctuary had the horns of the altar of sacrifice, the horns on the altar of incense, and the horns on the Ark of the Covenant. It's a perfect replication of the human body. And these horns send up messages to the intellect, but to the intellect only? They must reach the inner chamber. The traveling from out of the court into the holy place, it had to go into the most holy place, where the throne was to be completely established. And I read here from the book Evangelism. Evangelism, page 290, where this is elaborated for our understanding. Page 290, paragraph 1, it says, "We must not only read the Word of God, supposing that a casual knowledge of His Word will bring about in him a reformation of character. This work only the one who is the way and the truth and the life can accomplish. Firmly may certain doctrines of truth be held. Again and again they may be reiterated, till the holders think that they are indeed in possession of great blessings which these doctrines represent. But the greatest, most powerful truths may be held and yet kept in the outer court, exerting little influence to make their daily life wholesome and fragrant. The soul is not sanctified through the truth that is not practiced." Justification is only a small part of our work. I must accept justification, because without it, the work can't even start. But then, the knowledge of the justification, which is grasped by the intellect, must be brought into the inner chamber, which means what? It means that it must be practiced. That the reiteration of doctrine in the intellect is only just the first point of call. And many people stop right there. Do you remember the statement in early writings? People were worshipping in the first apartment, and when Jesus wanted them to go into the second apartment, where did they stay? In the first apartment. And this is typical to all human thinking. Oh, I've got it now. I understand it. That's fine. Good. But what does it say here? The life is not influenced. It said here that the daily life is not wholesome and fragrant. What is it like in your home? Is it fragrant there? Is everything sweet? You see, there's something more to happen. You can know the truth, and you can be the worst off for it. Because you become so judgmental, according to intellect. This isn't right, and that isn't right, and the other thing isn't right, according to intellect. And you are judgmental and not very fragrant in the home or in the church. The truth is kept altogether too much in the outer court. Bring it into the inner temple of the soul. And here it is. Enthrone it in the heart, and let it control the life. When the truth is kept apart from the life, in the outer court. So what's the outside of your life? The outer court. The intellect. Then the heart is not warmed with the glowing fire of God's goodness. That was Testimony, Volume 5, 547. So God is very precious. He comes to us at the first point of call through our brain nerves. He comes to the intellect and he shows us the truth. And we go, yes, yes, I got that. Yes, yes, I got that. Yep, yep, yep. That's wonderful. Yeah, oh, wonderful. Nebuchadnezzar discovered it, didn't he? His intellect got it. He knew that God was the God of the universe. And he even used his intellect to control everybody else. How many of us do that? So, he has been so gentle, leading us to the point where our intellect can grasp it and say, yes, okay, I agree. But then he's only just coming close to the door of the heart. He's been so gentle to lead us intellectually into truth. Now, he calls. Revelation chapter 3, verse 20. What does he say there? Behold, he's speaking to the intellect. He's saying, look, I'm at the door. Knock, knock. Can I come in? Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and sup with him, and he with me. I will not abhor you. I will come and sup with you. Isn't that what Jesus did? Didn't he come and sup with us in Gethsemane? What was he supping with us? Our depravity, our sinfulness, so that he became sin so that he could make us righteous. He came to cleanse our mental exercises of our brain. He came to purge sin out of us. As you look at the detail of what Jesus did for us, your intellect goes, what? And you now are called upon to open your heart to this, and it's too painful. There's many people that come to the point and they realize, uh-oh, if I'm going to open my heart, this is going to kill me. It's a reality. It's going to kill us. We've got to die with Jesus Christ, absolutely. And that's what the intellect doesn't really want. And the heart that is corrupted by sin goes, wait a minute. Desire of Ages again, page 161, where I dropped off before, and I continue now in paragraph 2. It says, "Know you not that you are the temple of God?" She quotes the Bible here. No man can of himself cast out the evil throng that have taken possession of the heart. Only Christ can cleanse the soul temple, but he will not force an entrance. He comes not into the heart as to the temple of old. You know, some people say, look, see, Jesus came there with his whip and came into the temple and he threw out those money changers. And we think, that's okay. No, he did that to demonstrate something. That if we let him into the heart, he will do to the temple of the heart what he did there. Cleanse it from all its passions and all its pride. Tell me, does a proud person want to be cleansed from pride? But as your intellect grasps what God did in Jesus Christ, and you discover through your intellect the depravity of the human race, can't you see it? Can't you see what's happening in the world today? Your intellect tells you, doesn't it? Stop living in a dream world. It's going to come here too, as came to Japan. It's going to come here too, as it came to Christchurch, to Brazil, to all those different places that have catastrophes. It's going to get worse and worse. And we here in Australia are so smug. We're all right. No, we won't be. God will speak to us through catastrophes. Why? Because those catastrophes are the consequence of sin. It's not God arbitrarily saying, here, let me into your heart. With all those things, he is knocking. May I come in? He does not force an entrance. And as he will not force an entrance, he comes not into the heart of the temple of old, but he says, behold, I stand at the door and knock. He will come not for one day merely, for he says, I will dwell in them and walk in them, and they shall be my people. He will subdue our iniquities, and thou wilt cast all their sins into the depths of the sea. His presence will cleanse and sanctify the soul, so that it may be a holy temple unto the Lord. His presence. His presence will do this. Oh, will you let him in? What does he say in Proverbs 23, verse 26? What does he say there? You know the statement well. What does he say there? My son, give me your heart and observe my way. What's he saying? I can't make you. I can't force you. Please, give me your heart. And who's speaking? Jesus. What is the heart? The heart, the seat of the affections, must be transformed, the moral nature renewed by grace. There are two components in the brain, if you remember on the whiteboard. The seat of the affections is the very inner core, the very center of the brain in its connection with the frontal lobe. That's where all the affections are operating and are being decided upon together with the frontal lobe. And here it is. The heart, which is the seat of the affections, must be transformed. The moral nature renewed by grace. And what is our intelligent involvement in this? What is the intellect? Has that got anything to do with the frontal lobe? With the most holy place of the sanctuary? It's actually the channel through which you reach the most holy place. So it says here in Sons and Daughters of God, page 99, the heart must be cleansed by the Spirit from all defilement. This cannot be done without the consent of the individual. Your intellect must consent. And then he can come in, because the heart doesn't want it. The heart doesn't want it. But the intellect must consent. To consent for God to be enthroned as the monarch in your temple, in the most holy place, your intellect is also a monarch. The horns of the altar, remember? There is a monarch there. It's called the will. You examine carefully your will. Is that a monarch? Here it is in the book Our High Calling, page 103. And this monarch is a very proud monarch. Remember Nebuchadnezzar? He represents every individual with a strong will. Everyone's got it. And here in Our High Calling, page 103, it says, paragraph 2 onwards, pure religion has to do with the will. The will is the governing power of the nature of man. What is the governing power? What is the king, the monarch of the human nature? The will. It must bring all the other faculties under its sway. The will is not the taste or the inclination, but it is the deciding power which works in the children of men unto obedience to God or unto disobedience. There is the monarch of your own self. You desire to make your life such as will fit you for heaven at last. You are often discouraged and finding yourself weak with moral power, in slavery to doubt, and controlled by the habits and customs of your old life in sin. That's reality. Your promises are like ropes of sand. Haven't we experienced that? You will be in constant peril until you understand the true force of the will. You may believe and promise all things, but your promises or your faith are of no value until you put your will on the side of faith and action. Faith is the hand that must act. Your will must make the hand do what God says. If you fight the fight of faith with all your willpower, you will conquer. You know, I hate it when people say you can't do anything. God will do everything, you don't have to do anything. Is that right? Your will must be operative. That is the monarch of the human nature. It goes on to say, as your feelings and your impressions and your emotions are not to be trusted, for they are not reliable, but you need not despair. It is for you to yield up your will to the will of Jesus Christ. And as you do this, God will immediately take possession and work in you to will and to do of his good pleasure. He will what? Immediately. You just give him your will, and he'll come rushing in. Your whole nature will then be brought under the control of the Spirit of Christ. And even your thoughts will be subject to him. You cannot control your impulses, your emotions, as you may desire. But you can control the will. And you can make an entire change in your life by yielding up your will to Christ. Your life will be hid with Christ in God, and allied to the power which is above all principalities and powers. You will have strength from God that will hold you fast to his strength. And a new light, even the light of living faith, will be possible to you. But your will must cooperate with God's will. Isn't this a perfect answer to all human concerns? I can't save myself. I'm so weak. I'm so helpless. Yes, you are. Of course. But you've got a will. And I ask you, brethren, children, young people, have you got a strong will? I will not. Is that right? That's a strong will. Well, why don't you just say, I will do what God says? I've got a strong will. That is generated by the intellect grasping what God is saying and showing us. And there comes a point in time, for instance, the smoker, who is so enslaved, he just really craves that cigarette. And he's so enslaved. But if he's got a will, it doesn't matter how he feels. Is that right? Okay, I'm going through withdrawal symptoms. Whatever withdrawal symptoms I've got, whether it's my passions, my pride, and everything else. I've got withdrawal symptoms, but I've got a will that says, I will not. And God, I will do what you say. And God will immediately come in. And he will come and draw close to you, and he will control your passions. And he will cleanse all your depravities. The people who don't exercise their will never know that experience. So, what did we read? We must place him as the monarch in our most holy place in the frontal lobe. So God patiently waits Knock, knock. And what does it say? Let him in. Let him into the secret chamber of your emotional, affectionate being. Emotions and affections have developed that are contrary to this. But let him in to change those emotions and those affections. To sit enthroned there, to rearrange, to cleanse everything. That's what we read in the beginning, to cleanse the soul temple. We're living in the time of the cleansing of the heavenly sanctuary, in which every sin is to be removed out of the heavenly sanctuary. But can it be removed out of there unless, first of all, it's removed out of here? No. And that's our experience. And this is the present truth that has been held by original Adventists for years, and today has been thrown overboard. And they call it present truth. That we don't need that past truth anymore. It's a bewilderment to the intelligence. So Testimony Volume 4. To sit enthroned and rearrange. Here it is in Testimony Volume 4, page 348. Testimony 4, 348. There it said, in paragraph 2, God calls upon you to yield pride and stubbornness, and to let his peace rule in your hearts. A meek and quiet spirit must be cherished. Don't cherish the old thoughts anymore. Don't cherish pride. A meek and quiet spirit must be cherished. Carry Christ's meekness with you in all your labors. An excited temper and cutting censure will not impress the people or gain their sympathy. That's the intellectual way of doing it. Sorry, that won't help. If we have the truth, we can afford to be calm and unexcited. Our language should be modest and elevated. The spirit you have cherished within has left its impression upon the countenance. Can you hide your internal thoughts? You can try as hard as you like. You can put a facade up, you can do whatever you like. You can put a smile on your face and you can read a stressed smile. The spirit you have cherished within has left its impression upon the countenance. Christ, enthroned in the soul temple, will efface fretful, peevish, unhappy looks. Have you seen how people glow when Jesus is in them? That peevish, and then something comes in and goes boom, and all of a sudden Jesus is not there? Well, we've put our conscience to sleep. We start concentrating on other things. As the cloud of witnesses look upon a man reflecting the image of Christ, they will realize that he is surrounded by a pleasant atmosphere. The world will see that amid the storm of abuse, he stands unmoved, like the lofty cedar. That man is one of God's heroes. Do you like to be a hero? He has overcome himself. And who's a good example of that besides Jesus? Daniel. He was calm and meek and stood firm. He was the example for the 144,000, which we must be. Let this mind be in you. Every man through whom God works will have to learn that the living, ever-present, ever-acting God is supreme and has lent him talents to use, an intellect to originate, a heart to be the seat of his throne. My Life Today, page 332. So now you have this beautiful thing as the monarch of your soul, if you pursue these principles. And in this work, with your mind and heart now being governed and controlled, what does he make you aware of as he's beginning now to take you along the path of cleansing? What does he make you aware of? Isaiah 55:7-9, you know it well. My ways are not your ways, neither are your thoughts my thoughts. So now I'm enthroned in your heart now. So thoughts will come. But those thoughts are not my thoughts. What are you going to do now? There's going to be a conflict in the mind. The recorded memories, the recorded feelings, the emotional entrenched experiences that you have relied upon in the past now want to, because it's a memory bank, you can't just wipe off the memory bank like that. God is systematically cleaning the memory bank. How many times do you do that in a computer? Does that just happen with one press of the button? How can you clean the memory bank? You have to keep on pressing again, another one and another one and another one and another one. This is exactly what is to be done in our mind under the government of the monarch in our mind. And I just want to conclude with a short representation of this. The conflict within our mind with the recorded memories and feelings, the emotional past that has governed me, it is now no longer God's. It's no longer to be part of me because God is controlling there. And he is now coming to us and trying to help us. And in Testimony Volume 5, he wants to control us. And remember, the will must continually function in this transaction because he doesn't take away our will. He never, even now that he is the monarch, he still wants my monarch, my will, to coincide with his. Remember we sung it in our song there? May thy will, not mine, be done. May thy will and mine be one. Chase these doubtings from my heart. Now thy perfect peace impart. This is part of the experience. And here in Testimony Volume 5, page 68, paragraph 4, it says, remember, there's all these different memories of the past. And remember what I shared with you in the past, that there are different components of the brain that have got memory and decision-making factors in them. And they all come to you as voices. What voice will you acknowledge as the voice of God? What power has the Lord in reserve to correct your errors and show you your course as it is? What power to work in the church? If you refuse to believe until every shadow of uncertainty and every possibility of doubt is removed, you will never believe. The doubt that demands perfect knowledge will never yield to faith. Faith rests upon evidence, not demonstration. Now follow. The Lord requires us to obey the voice of duty when there are other voices all around us urging us to pursue an opposite course. So just because Jesus is enthroned in my most holy place it doesn't mean I'm not going to hear those other voices anymore. I must continually follow the command of the monarch of my mind. When there are other voices trying to tell me other things, it requires earnest attention from us to distinguish the voice which speaks from God. We must resist. What does it mean? We must resist and conquer inclination. That's the other messages from the other parts of the brain. And obey the voice of conscience without parleying or compromise, lest its prompting cease and will and impulse control. Will and impulse. Control over the voice of God. Oh, that can still happen. And now notice how that voice, the monarch in your mind, will talk to you. The word of the Lord comes to all who have not resisted his spirit by determining not to hear and obey. This voice is heard in warnings, in counsels, in reproof. It is the Lord's message of light to his people. If we wait for louder calls, for better opportunities, the light may be withdrawn and we left in darkness. Will I listen to the voice? Further down it says, we should ever cherish a sense that individually we are standing before the Lord of hosts. Individually I'm standing before the monarch in my very mind. We should ever cherish that. Not a word, no act, no thought even, should be indulged to offend the eye of the Eternal One. We shall then have no fear of man or of earthly power, because a monarch whose empire is the universe, who holds in his hands our individual destinies for time and eternity, is taking cognizance of all our work. The monarch that I should cherish. Can you see something here? Just because he's the monarch in your heart doesn't mean he's necessarily going to be allowed to control, unless constantly we place and cherish his presence there. So, in summary then, intellectual knowledge is only the first point of call by the Lord. To be truly effective and saving, the soul temple must be enthroned by the monarch of the universe and served by the monarch of the will. And this is expressed in Desire of Ages, in conclusion, page 494. This is on the subject of the atonement that this statement is made, because this is the area that is so poorly comprehended by the mind of the human. 494, there in paragraph 4 it says, the only way in which we can gain a more perfect apprehension of truth is by keeping the heart tender and subdued by the Spirit of Christ. The only way to have a perfect apprehension of truth. The soul must be cleansed from vanity and pride, and vacated of all that has held it in possession, and Christ must be enthroned within. Human science is too limited to comprehend the atonement. The plan of redemption is so far-reaching that philosophy cannot explain it. The intellect is insufficient. It will ever remain a mystery that the most profound reasoning cannot fathom. The science of salvation cannot be explained, but it can be known by experience. Only he who sees his own sinfulness can discern the preciousness of the Saviour. Don't worry about arguing the point on the atonement with people who are only concentrating on philosophical, theological understanding. They can't understand it. The true nature of the atonement cannot be worked out by the most profound reasoning. It can't fathom it. But can it be experienced? Amen. And may God grant us to let his thoughts and his ways that are higher than the heavens are from the earth be the controlling force in a mind that cannot fathom it but can experience it. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.